Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome. My name is Eric Doyle and this is OGV Energy Live, coming to you from sunny Aberdeen, which is a very rare thing, but we're taking it while we get it. This is our interactive live stream show, which brings you news and insights from across the energy sector by bringing to life the UK's leading energy industry publication, OGV Energy Magazine. Say hello, tell us where you are in the world. I'm just going to have a look in the chat. We've already had some lovely people that have said hello. Hello to, let me just see, Osama, welcome. It's good to see you. Farhan is here. Good to have you with us. IEDC Australasia Young Professional Subcommittee. Fantastic. Welcome. This is absolutely in your sweet spot. Ian Gove, good to have you with us, Ian. Denzel's here, Shahid, Graham Dallas, already doing the right thing. Paul Goonan, I've got to say hello to you because you're a regular. Thank you from sunny Houston. We've got people from all over the world joining us today, which is excellent. So please do what these lovely people have done. Say hello, tell us where you are, tell us what company you work with, and tell us what you do for a living, particularly if you're in the drilling and well services sector, which is our feature for this month. If you've seen the show before, you'll know that every month we feature news and interviews with our partners from the publication and across the industry. We try and update you on all the latest news and opinions on a particular energy-related topic. So don't be shy with your comments, and I'll pick out the most interesting comments or questions to put to our amazing panel of guests. And we offer a little incentive for that. The best question or comment in the chat from today will win a half-page editorial or advert in an upcoming edition of the magazine. So your marketing team, your leadership team will absolutely love you to bits because you get that for free. So have a think about what you're listening to and put some really good questions and comments to our guests. This month is the Drilling and Well Services issue for OGV Energy Magazine, as it says right there, featuring the Stena Drilling's Ice Max right on the front cover. So we're going to feature Chris Carbaugh. He's coming to join us, CEO of Stena Drilling, who's going to give us all the updates and the latest from Stena and the drilling world as he sees it. We're then going to check in with two guests, one from Sentinel Subsea and one from Exceed Energy. We'll introduce those in a second. We're then going to hear from our friends that bring us up to date with all that's going on in our markets. In our Market Watch section, we're going to hear from the EIC, and we're going to hear from Rig Logics at Westwood Global Energy Group. We're also going to be checking in with DQ Intel for some insight on what's happening in a particular geographic region as regards drilling projects. Then we're going to finish off the show by dropping in on Spirit Energy. We're going to meet Willem Boon van Oxy, Wells Technical Authority at Spirit, to give us his views on nearly 30 years. Yes, that's 30 years, and we'll be discussing that in some depth as a well engineer, Wells Technical Authority, and what's happened over the years and where's Wells management going. So to remember to keep your comments in, as all these lovely people are doing. I'll pick out some. Hi, Mari. Really good to see you with us. Mari Salcido, that is fantastic. I will send you, we took a video of Mari at OTC and she's desperate to get a copy of it. We will send that to you, Mari, definitely. Hi to Steve Gray, Board Drilling. Good to have you with us. Denzel's with us. Stuart Henderson, good to see you, sir. Just keep your questions and comments coming in, and remember to tell us where you are. We are going to kick off with our headline guest. Now, you can trace, it's arguable because you can maybe go a little bit beyond that, back to the late 1800s, but you can trace the first mobile offshore drilling unit back to 1954 with the Mr. Charlie, which was rated for, wait for it, a massive 40 foot of water depth, 40 feet of water depth. And then on September the 14th, 1969, the Sequest drilling rig struck oil for the first time in the North Sea. Now, the offshore drilling world has given many of us, including myself, fantastic careers and you know, opportunities over the years, and it's still going strong. Offshore drilling has continued to progress and develop, and we find it pushing the boundaries of technical and geography today. With that in mind, we've invited a special guest to join us. So please welcome our headline guest. If I just click the right buttons here, Chris Carbaugh, COO of Stena Drilling. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, good, Eric. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Please keep your questions and comments coming in for Chris. First off, congratulations on the splendid looking Ice Max on the front cover and your article in our monthly magazine this month. It's a fantastic piece. If anybody hasn't read it, get in there and give it a read to see what's going on at Stena these days. So on that general theme, how are things at Stena? What's front of mind at the moment?
Yeah, we're doing really good. Of course, the Ice Max is in Canada, working for BP. So finally got to Canada after being named Ice Max, which is really good. Yeah. We've got 2 ships in Guyana working for Exxon. It's amazing what we're doing down there. The country's really come on a lot in the last couple of years. And then closer to home, the Stena Don's just gone out for Shell. And then the big news is our new rig, the Evolution. She's also going to go to work for Shell in the Gulf of Mexico on a pretty long-term 5-year contract. So everybody's really excited about that.
Fantastic. So keeping busy, despite what we read in the press about offshore drilling campaigns and all that, the world is busy. The drilling world is busy, right? Which is great. It's great for all of us.
That's right. We've never been busier in the last couple of years.
Fantastic. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that you talk about in the article, and then we'll maybe sort of branch off a little bit. Right at the top of the article in this month's magazine, you talk about Stena's core values. Now, core values have been much maligned over the years, but for companies that get it right, it really means something. And you get a sense in the article that it really means something. You talk about care in capitals, which we'll talk about in a second, innovation, performance, and how these shape Stena's approach to business, your relationship with clients, and of course, how you look after your people. How does Stena's core values play out in real life on a daily basis?
Right. So yeah, our values are care, innovation, and performance. We're a small company. It's probably a little bit easier for us to focus on the care and the innovation. So innovation's always been a big part of Stena. For example, we embraced innovation in terms of managed pressure drilling about 6 years ago to help our clients drill very, very difficult wells, drilly undrillable, sometimes we call it. We've got about 30 wells in our portfolio that we've drilled MPD, and that equates to over 2,000 days of operating the system. And a part of the innovation there is, we own and operate the system ourselves. We don't rent the system out from somebody else. The system's kind of bespoke, tailored to our rigs, and we've used it in places. Guyana is one of our big places where we use MPD, but also Cyprus, Mexico, and even the Bahamas.
Incredible. So what drove the decision to, instead of renting, but actually bringing the systems on board and actually buying them internally? What was the driver for that?
We wanted to be in control.
Right.
If we own the system, we can maintain it, we can operate it ourselves, and then we also have a high degree of confidence that the system's being operated appropriately. We can maintain it, and in fact, these are permanently installed systems on our rig. And I believe it was the first DNV installed system, DNV approved installed system.
Right. Okay. The first DNV approved.
That's
amazing.
Correct. Yep.
Absolutely amazing. It's no secret. I've spoken about it many times on this show, and anybody who knows me I had a period of my life for about 16 years where I was 10 years offshore in offshore drilling. One of the things that really got me about when I first stepped onto my first drilling rig, and I began to realize it over time. I was electrical, I was the electrician, but I noticed that one thing about drilling that really inspired me was the fact that I'd speak to tool pushers and rig managers and ask them about their startup in life. And their startup in life was they started on the deck, and then they moved up to the floor, and then they were up in the derrick, and then they were in the doghouse on the break, and then they just moved up. And I've always found the offshore drilling world, or certainly my experience of the offshore drilling world, an amazing place for young talent to come into and can, if they put their heads down and learn and do all of that, you can rise up through the drilling ranks pretty well. Is that still a thing in drilling? Is that still as prevalent today?
Oh, most definitely. Of course, with the downturn, we lost a lot of people. But if you look at the example we have in Guyana with the locals, so we're taking guys that never been on drilling rigs,
right?
Training them up, get them opportunities on the deck, up on the rig floor. But we've also taken a few guys on. We put them on Stena vessels. We're very lucky. We have Stena AB, so we put a couple of people in Stena ferries to get them some sea time. So we now have trainee DPOs and a few other positions. And in fact, I believe a few derrickmen in Guyana right now as well. Yeah.
Is that right? I had no idea that
Mhm.
on the marine side you send people away to
We can do.
incredible,
And in
absolutely
fact,
incredible.
Stena, the parent company, had to deal with a few marine colleges and universities in Europe.
My goodness, my goodness.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that struck out, which I find fantastic, because I was offshore sort of 90 to 2000, was the fact that you talk so much in the article about the digital journey. Please tell us about the digital journey in drilling. What does that mean for Stena, and what are you doing in that space?
Well, our digital journey. So I guess one could say we were a little bit behind at one point. So we looked at some of these legacy programs, the technology debt, I'd like to say, old systems, and they weren't really working as well as they should. And probably our first phase was getting rid of some of those software packages. Now we have new things like IBM's Maximo for procurement, logistics, and our daily drilling reports have been replaced. We've also gone to some local companies. So we've supported, Aberdeen companies such as Interblock. So we supported Interblock, and they're developing a new software tool to manage and track all lifting equipment. It's also been used on elsewhere in the North Sea. They've had some good success. Solab is an HR tool, also a local company, and eServe, a local company we use for laser scanning and our digital twin. That's sort of the first piece of the puzzle. Moving further afield, it's how do we take that into drilling? And come back to care just for a second. We had a behavioral based care system, or stop card system, which we've digitized, and we call it care. So you can go out on deck, and you can come back in, and you can do a digital care card on your phone or on iPod or whatever, and then that goes into the system. And we even use AI to track trends and to see what's going on. But in terms of drilling, it's a little bit different. So we were maybe a little bit behind some of our competitors. This year, we're going to install Novos and MMC systems on 3 of our rigs. And this
Right.
is a huge investment for us. And to back up for a minute, Novos is an NOV operating system. It sits within the drilling package in the software. And then MMC's multi-machine control. So MMC will give us the ability to operate hydro rackers and rig floor equipment kind of hands-free. It'll give us more consistency. It'll be, hopefully a safer drilling environment as well. Whereas the operating system, that kind of closes a loop, so we can have, basically use apps to do things hands-free, like making connections or drilling a stand down, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But something that rings true or rings through in what you're talking about here is the fact that you're not shy or backing off from going out to people who specialize in a particular digital thing and bringing that. You're not. I've worked with companies before where it's like, if we haven't invented it here, we're not going to use it. But you're going out to all those companies that you mentioned and all of the supply chain to look for the very best in digital. Okay, you're saying you might have been a bit behind, but you're trying to push forward with it now, right?
Well, I think we've gotten some. We're up to speed now. We're
Yeah.
moving ahead really good. Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, very much so. I'm just going to say hello to some of the lovely folks that have joined us. Robert Farrell is here. Hello, Robert. Darren, Arnold, thank you so much. If you've just joined us, drop a note in the chat to let us know where you are in the world. We love to see how far we're reaching. And tell us who you work with and tell us what you do. Remember, we have Chris with us for about another 6 or 8 minutes. So if you want to ask him a question about Stena, or make a comment about what he's talking about, that whole digital piece in drilling is fascinating. Drop it in the comments here. We're awarding a half-page article or advert for the best comment of the day. So stick it in there and let us know where you are and what you're doing. Chris, coming back to the core values, you've digitized. You mentioned a bit of a clanger there. I took a note. AI in behavioral based safety. What on earth is that all about? That sounds fascinating. I doubt you're going to be able to explain exactly how all the algorithms work and all of that, but how is that even working?
Yeah, that's right, Eric. You might have the wrong person for that. In simple terms, people are putting together observations every day, right? And we break our observations into 3 pieces. So process safety, kind of a personal safety, and energy efficiency or the environment, right? And when somebody writes out a card, maybe we can't figure out exactly what it's talking about, or exactly what bucket to put in. So it goes through a model, which kind of breaks it all down and helps it sort it out into, okay, well, this card's actually energy efficiency. This card deals with process safety. And then it further, we also can, what is it, a positive observation, or a negative, right?
Yep. Very good, very good. How does that feed into this whole thing that you talk about, optimizing performance, running through into your performance charter? Now, we've seen performance charters with many companies. Some of them have fallen flat in the face. Some of them have kind of led progress. Mm-hmm. How does your performance charter work with you to help you improve what you're doing?
So this year we put together a performance charter with our clients, and there's five main pillars. Of course, safety, energy efficiency. We like looking at our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
We talked energy efficiency, and when the guys are going home talking to their families are talking about carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So we've kind of moved a little bit. Performance in terms of reliability, performance in terms of subsea reliability, and of course drilling performance, right?
Yeah.
And that the drilling performance piece of the puzzle is really interesting, because we're looking at, automation here, automating the drilling process, sort of a, end to end. We're talking about from planning all the way through execution. And Novos is that execution piece where that's really important for us. And that's where we're going.
So what is Novos going to give you practically? What is it going to let you see that you didn't see before?
Right. Well, the operating system Novos will allow us to put apps into our system, and the apps can be as simple as making a connection hands-free, okay?
Right.
And that'll save us time, and it'll also be safer, right? So we're talking about removing people from the rig floor, drilling more efficiently, and of course, eventually, quicker, right?
Right.
More wells, less time, smaller carbon footprint, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now it's no secret that people start to quake a little bit and get a little bit worried when we start talking about removing people from processes and all of that. Mm-hmm. People start to think about jobs and all of that. What's your view on how digitization, automation, AI, and all of that, and how it might be actually creating new opportunities?
It is creating new opportunities. We're not talking about getting rid of people. We're talking about, augmenting their skills. I mean, if you think about the driller on the rig floor, he's busy doing a lot of things, but now I can step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture.
Wow.
Look at the bigger picture in terms of well control. We work in places where, the game's moved on a little bit in terms of process safety. It's more important than it's ever been. If we have a big process safety event offshore, I mean, we're talking about we could be shut down, not even for a short period of time, but permanently. I mean, a massive spill somewhere in like Guyana would really affect the industry in that country. So we cannot afford to have mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you talk about in the article is how you're using digital to stream real-time or certainly time-related equipment reliability data. And now is that being streamed back onshore for analysis? Is that something?
It is. So we use Kongsberg Cognify system.
Right.
It has access to 1,300 sensors around the rig. So this information is always being going back to shore. And we're talking about information that's being used to assist the drilling process, BOP testing information, so we can zoom in to see if there's an issue with the BOP. But it's also stuff like condition-based monitoring, so we can continually look at, a bearing noise if we have a noise, or all kinds of things like this. It's really interesting. Some of that information goes back to the OEMs like NOV or Rolls-Royce for our thrusters, and that's getting reviewed on a constant basis to see if there's an issue.
So the OEM's actually seeing that data?
Sorry to interrupt you, but when issues pop up, it's also easier for the OEM to go in and help us fix it. Yeah.
So the OEM's actually seeing the data real time.
Correct.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. It's amazing to see an industry, not just move with the times, but actually lead the times as well, right? Incredible. Incredible. Have you seen any, this is just an off-piece question, it's just come to mind. From when I worked in drilling 90 to 2000, has anything changed commercially or contractually? Is there anything evolved or developed in the way that the commercial relationships you have with your clients?
Most definitely. So we're seeing a lot more push to offer services that we previously didn't offer.
Right.
Some of these services might be things that were normally supplied by the operator, such even things like ROVs, solids control, tubing running services.
Right.
So that's creeping into the contracts as well. And then you're also seeing performance-based contracts. So that's where the performance piece of the puzzle comes in, where we both have skin in the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness me. I remember when I moved from offshore drilling into cable lay and S-lay, J-lay with a subsea constructor, and I was amazed in the difference in risk sharing on contracts and things like that. And I was like, well, I come from the drilling world where this is totally different, but it's now evolved into that, which is interesting. Let me have a little look. I think we have, is that a question or a comment? Let me have a little look here. This is from Ben Herriot. Great to have the opportunity to listen to Stena's plans and the addition of the EvoMax. It's undoubtedly a very exciting time for the business. Ben is, let me just get this. It's a huge question. As a supplier of drilling personnel to Stena, is the EvoMax carrying forward the latest tech, like you've mentioned, or is this something you're looking to implement across the fleet as a whole?
So the EvoMax will have no lucid MMC on board.
Right.
And you're correct. We'd like to, obviously we're going to test it out. And if it works out, we'll start implementing some of these technologies across the board throughout the fleet. Yeah.
Very good. Great question coming in there from Ben. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Hey, listen, you mentioned something else, which back in the day we didn't really associate as pertaining to the drilling world, but the whole issue of emissions. You've set yourself quite a lofty goal as an organization in emission reduction. What is that? 15% on your 2019 figures?
That's exactly correct, Eric. So our goal was to reduce emissions by 15% on 2019 figures. So far, we're on target. I would like to say we've done it just purely through technology. We've put things on the rigs like reverse osmosis water makers. We have a lift calculator, which tells us how many hydraulic pumps to have online at any one time. But I would say that probably the biggest piece of the puzzle there is the crew. So using Cognify and all this information we have now, we've got digital energy meters around the rig. And people can see, well, maybe I don't need to have 5 generators online. I only need to have 4 generators online. So just that input from the crew is probably having the biggest effect across the fleet. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah, tremendous. So the crews are impacting that. Your carbon footprint reduction through normal operations and all that. I know Andrew Slesser's just asked a question, but I think you're addressing that just now. And this growing, and it was prevalent in your article, this growing emphasis on process safety. So back in the day, I remember in drilling back in the 90s, it was all about behavioral safety. It was all about, watch where you're putting your hands, watch where you're standing with lifts, watch where you're standing on the floor. But you're now bringing this process safety mindset and this analysis of this more to the fore, right?
That's completely correct. I mean, of course, it's important where you put your hands. We don't want anybody to get hurt in terms of, small personal injuries, but we also like to look at the bigger picture, right?
Right.
So process safety is very important for us, important for our clients. During COVID, actually, we had people holed up in hotel rooms all over the world for 2 weeks at a time. So we thought, well, what can we do? Mm-hmm. So we put together a bespoke process safety course and we rolled it out to the hands. We've had really good feedback. And in fact, we limit to about 16 people per course. It's very interactive. It's done live online, a bit like this. And it's been very successful. In fact, we've had clients doing it. We've rolled it out to some of the third-party personnel as well. So it's it's really good.
How the world has changed, where the drillers are actually now training the clients in the supply chain as well in something like process safety. I love that. That's brilliant. Chris, I hate to blindside you with a question, but you're at the cutting edge. Technology, people, process, care, all of that. Where is drilling going? Where do you see the future taking drilling? And what's it going to look like in 10, 20 years?
I think the big thing for us right now is collaboration. So we're collaborating better with service companies than we ever have, whether it's Baker Hughes, Schlumberger, or Halliburton.
Right.
And if you go on our rigs, we're working with them. We're actually providing a more integrated package for the client through win-win kind of contracting models as well. So I think that's where it's going. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. We are going to take one last question. Unfortunately, it's from LinkedIn user. If you contact me after the show and just let me know who you are, or just drop a little note in to tell us your name. It's from a LinkedIn user. How do drilling companies plan to diversify other markets where the expertise can be transferred? Perhaps that Stena would look to explore. You've got a wry smile already.
That's a pretty difficult question. We do have a link up at an agreement with DecarbonX, looking at some potential carbon capture projects. So we are looking at that. Yeah.
Very good. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. That might be a scoop. Listen. We loved having you in the magazine. We've loved having you on the show. Thank you for that little insight into what's happening within Stena and your view of drilling as a whole. Please get in touch with Chris. You can connect with him and extend the conversation. But for now, we wish you all the best with you and all of your colleagues and teams at Stena. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us today, Chris.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye. Well, that was Chris Carbo. I'm going to just make sure we can get that. Let's just take some time to say hello to some other people that have joined us. Unfortunately, we missed your question, George, but maybe Chris will pick up back on that. But thanks for putting it in there. Hi to, let me see. Hi to Peter. Good afternoon. Yeah, I wasn't telling any lies. It is sunny in Aberdeen, isn't it? Absolutely. Hi to Stephen Hunter. Hi to Jevon. Hi to Martin Booth. Thank you very much for joining us. We've just finished our headline section of the show. We're going to move into the industry spotlight section of the show, where we pick up on some of our members who are either in this month's magazine or part of our membership community, and we give them a chance to explain what they're up to and what they're doing. This month, we have hooked up with none other than, where is he? He's right here. Jim Gordon from Sentinel Subsea. How are you doing, Jim?
Fine, thank you, Eric. How are you?
It is great to see you. I'm very well, thanks. And we have got, now, people might give us a hard time for this. We kind of build the Hollywood star that is Tim Wiggum. But in typical oil and gas fashion, Tim's had to go offshore today. So in no way is this a number two. All right. This is, for anyone who knows, Callum Taylor from Exceed. How you doing, Callum?
Yeah, I'm well, Eric. Thanks for that.
Yeah, good stuff. Actually, you were the real deal that we wanted. Tim was kind of, getting in the way a little bit,
It's been the long game.
So it's an absolute pleasure to have you both on the show. I'm going to start with Jim. And remember, any questions or comments that you have for Jim and or Callum, stick them in there and we'll get them on the screen. So, Jim, your article in the magazine this month is fascinating. Passive well monitoring technology, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us a wee bit about what Sentinel's focus is, and for anyone who doesn't understand, just what it's all about.
Absolutely, Eric. So Sentinel Subsea was founded in 2018, and we've developed what we call a new innovation called Well Sentinel. And that, as you say, is a passive well monitoring technology that's been tested, field trialed, and proven here in the UK. And we're now installing systems globally. I guess I better start by saying kind of what is passive monitoring.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
passive monitoring. You have the floor. Yeah, so passive monitoring means 24/7 continuous monitoring of the asset, and that's done without any subsea power whatsoever, without any data communication or any data tie-in to other subsea infrastructure. It really is, we like to say, a remote system, a plug-and-play system. The system essentially works by gathering and then passively detecting for a specific fluid in the subsea environment. And critically, as I said, that's done without any power whatsoever. And once that material is detected, and this really is the key innovation to the technology, once that fluid is chemically detected, it then releases an alert beacon to surface. And that alert beacon then switches on and says, I was in an instance, well number 5123, I was beacon number 212, and then it sends an automatic alert to an operator or the asset owner saying that alert has been picked up. The only way that can happen is because the passive system, has come into contact with a fluid that shouldn't be there. And the operator can then obviously respond to the incident and in a timely manner, much faster than the kind of current technologies that are out there. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour as to the technology itself.
There's plenty to unpack here. There's plenty to unpack here. This is phenomenal, right? So as it stands right now, if you were to walk into the wells floor and any of the operators that don't use this system, and say what the condition of our subsea wells? What's the status of them? What's the sort of general mode of play in how they're assessing the status of their subsea wells today?
So there's multiple ways. So there's pressure and temperature in the well, which is obviously the traditional way of monitoring subsea wells. There's also ROV flybys, which are done annually, and there's an inspection campaign that goes along with that. There's other technologies around kind of active systems where there's some sort of LiDAR or acoustic systems. But again, these are all powered systems. And the key to our technology, and I think this is kind of where we really want to kind of make the point here, is from the start of the development of the system, we've really strived to keep the deployment, the use of our technology as simple and as easy as possible. And that hasn't been easy, to be honest with you, Eric. There's always an appetite to add complexity. And at Sentinel, we've always tried to keep this innovation as a real easy to use, simple to deploy technology that really is providing that 24/7 instant alert. Should something happen with the subsea asset, the subsea well, the operator will know instantly. They'll get the automatic reply. They can also go onto a digital platform and say, should the well be in with the Sentinel system on? Green means that the system has not detected anything, and red means that something's happened and they need to go and have a look to see what's happened. So that's really the key to our technology, is really keeping it simple to deploy, and really that's where we're focused.
Outstanding. So not powered, so we don't require any subsea power.
That's correct. Yeah. The system really is, in this instance, it's a chemical solution. What we're trying to do is we like to say add another tool into the toolbox. So
right.
One of the most fascinating things I found about learning about the kind of wells and subsea industry is just how challenging it is to operate in these environments. Yeah. Unlike topsides, where you can instantly go and see what's happening, the subsea, I think, requires a different type of thinking, and that's where we really see how we support the industry. This technology, I think, sits kind of on the right-hand side of that risk bow tie. Right. And again, that power, that lack of power, really is the key part of this technology. Yeah,
absolutely. How do you see Well Sentinel fitting into this sort of whole life cycle of the well?
So that's a good question. So the systems that we've deployed so far have traditionally been around suspended subsea wells. Right. And that kind of makes sense, because often these wells are not attached to any other infrastructure. They're often very remote. And we have some upcoming projects globally that are still focused around these suspended subsea wells. However, later this year, we're actually looking at projects that are deploying these trees, deploying our systems onto subsea trees. And we're really excited about that. And these are producing subsea trees. Right. We're providing that 24/7 alert monitoring for these subsea assets. And there's also another project that we've got coming up that we're looking at, which is deploying onto a recently drilled well, and recently drilled development well that's getting drilled later this year. And the operator's looking for, once they've drilled the well itself, they're looking to then obviously suspend the well and come back with the equipment later on to fully complete the well. And our technology is going to provide that monitoring between the kind of that suspension and when the operator is able to return and install that equipment. And kind of the final area I think we fit across the life cycle is we're seeing a lot of traction around kind of carbon capture monitoring, right, and really providing a low cost solution for monitoring of carbon capture fields, and particularly around some of the legacy wells that we see that are contained in that carbon capture field. So again, as you can see, that the system really is applicable across the entire life cycle of the well, from drilling through to the production with the tree, and then through to suspension, and then just up to final abandonment.
So, I mean, yeah, it sounds fascinating, and I was fascinated reading about it. So if I'm sitting here as I'm responsible for a bunch of suspended subsea wells, and I've got an issue about status, and I'm looking at data here where the only real indication I've got pressure, temperature, and maybe results from the ROV flyby from April of last year or whatever it might be. Should I be concerned about deployment? Is it going to be complicated how we install these?
No, absolutely not. And that, again, that's part of the key to the solution, as I mentioned, the simplicity of it. As we know, every single asset is different.
Yeah.
And that means there's a wide range of assets that we deal with, and we work closely with the operator to find the best gathering solution that would fit their individual asset. But ultimately, I mean, we're not asking an operator to do anything that they wouldn't be doing normally, because I mean, operators are often installing debris caps onto wellheads. They're obviously installing equipment onto subsea trees. The system is deployed in almost exactly the same way, where it's lowered down and deployed onto it. And other than that, and inserting the correct passive monitoring trigger, that's the system installed. That's it, monitoring 24/7 assurance that the integrity of that asset is secure. And that flexibility is something that we're really seeing when we're working with our clients as well.
Yeah.
Is that they really appreciate how easy the system is to deploy. It's really no different than what they would normally do.
Incredible. We're going to flip to a question from Marikan Othman. Thank you so much for your question, Marikan. It's a big question, so I might have to put it up then take it off again so I can read it. Hi, Jim at Sentinel. It's Marikan Othman from Ventura IoT. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to know what kind of maintenance needs to be done once the well Sentinel has been deployed on the sea bottom, and how is this maintenance done? He then goes on to say, blah, 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 blah. How is this maintenance done, and what is the frequency of maintenance on well Sentinel?
So I guess there's kind of 2 points here. The design life of the system is 20 years for the subsea structure.
Right.
And for that, there's no maintenance done, and we've done obviously the engineers here have done the testing and have the indication to say that the design life is 20 years. The actual monitoring part of the system, again, we have two different options. There's an option 1, which is for 10 years of continuous monitoring, and an option 2, which stretches that again up to 20 years. And this is without any intervention into the system at all. And that's really done because, I mean, what we're doing here is we're using a system that is just utilizing the general laws of physics and the general laws of chemistry, buoyancy, again with chemistry. So the system itself really doesn't have any moving parts. It can sit there monitoring passively, and because of the no moving parts, there really isn't anything physically to go wrong, and that's how we can get that elongated design life and have that confidence in the system that it can sit there passively monitor for that long. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Marikan. I hope that that answered your question. The lovely Charles, or Charlie Bain, as I know him, coming from the subsea ROV sector, Jim, would this essentially look to reduce and eliminate more complicated means of inspection?
Correct. Yes. So we see this as complementing ROV. So we're providing a system that is mitigating and lowering the risk profile of a subsea well. Right. And by doing that, the operator has the confidence to be able to say we can maybe mitigate some of these ROV flybys, and in that we're reducing the operator's cost base, and we're also eliminating some of the CO2 emissions that are created by going out and inspecting the wells continuously. Obviously, there will be times where the operator would still wish to use an ROV to fly by and inspect, and that's really there's different ways that the system can be deployed, but ultimately it's there to mitigate against the risk profile that any subsea well would have. and provide 24/7 continuous monitoring, as I've stated.
Absolutely. As Charlie goes on to later say, we've got to keep the ROVs going. So this isn't about replacing ROVs. This is about just giving that security and that sort of 24/7 understanding. Thank you so much for that. Just finally, closing off with you, Jim, can you tell us about, you mentioned 2 trials in the North Sea and further afield in what you're actually doing commercially now?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll just touch on those trials. The kind of genesis of Sentinel was that we were founded in 2018, and very early on, and I think we were quite lucky, we were able, this was actually at the same time that the OGTC and the NZTC were being introduced into the kind of UK ecosystem.
Okay.
And at that time, we were very fortunate to meet Spirit Energy, and particularly Mike Richardson and Willem Boone. And through them, they were able to identify a challenge that they had. And we were able to work closely with the operator to be able to provide this well monitoring system. And that really was the kind of the early win for Sentinel, was being able to demonstrate the system on a subsea well, on a live subsea well. And I think that that's really critical for a lot of technologies in the UK. And I think, you know, recognizing that the system can make a difference and it's here to help and support operators, show that the assets are secure, I think is kind of
pretty good. For everyone who's watching, or if you're watching and you think someone that you know might be interested in this, the name's Jim Gordon, Sentinel Subsea. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's a lovely guy, as you've just heard, and he's got plenty to talk about when it comes to Well Sentinel. Jim, thank you so much for a wee bit of an insight into what you're doing. I agree, Charlie. Really good stuff. So, Tim, or should I say Callum, are you going to do this in a South African accent?
I can do my best if you like.
You can do your best. Callum, performance coach at Exceed, worked closely with Tim in the performance team there at Exceed. For those who don't know, can you give us a wee bit of an overview on what Exceed does and what you focus on?
Yeah, so Exceed provide services across the well services life cycle. You know, whether that be all the way through from kind of concept design, subsurface technology, managed pressure drilling, intervention, decommissioning, right the way through. And then who I work for Exceed Performance, so we kind of deal with the more people side of things. So the crew on the rig floor, helping them really push performance forward. And our kind of thought process is, you know, if we've got strong leadership, we've got nice stable technology, you know, using our systematic approach for learning, we can really help frontline leaders accelerate that learning process, push performance as far as it can really go, and get the most out of most out of the people on that rig floor.
And if you follow these guys at Exceed, you'll know that you're all the way around the world doing this with teams. You talk a lot, as you and the other performance team do, about the people, process, technology triangle. Yeah. We've seen that quite a lot coming from you guys. How does that actually pull through into the kind of work that you do, and how important is the people element to it?
Yeah, so I mean, for me as an industry, and lots of other industries are the same. We're really good at the technology piece. You know, we just heard about a great piece of technology there, and we're pretty good at the process piece and how to use stuff, how to do things if those processes are followed. But we're maybe not as good at kind of really utilizing the talent within our workforce, listening to their ideas and getting them done. And we always talk about how people are the greatest asset in any workforce. But you know what it's like. You speak to people that work in these businesses, and they're saying, you know, I said that a year ago and nothing happened, etc. You know, you've heard these things all the time, and then you speak to leaders about that, and they're like, we either don't know how to do it, or we're so busy on the hamster wheel just trying to get work done that we're finding it really difficult to execute these things. And that's where we come in. We're that accountability partner that takes away those barriers from getting those things done, whether that be typing up the after action review minutes and putting together the meetings to get things done, making sure planning happens properly. You know, we've reviewed all the well procedures, etc., before we go and execute tasks. All those little things that people struggle to do because we're desperately trying to get the work done. That's what we do. and it's absolutely essential that we do that, and listen to our people and actually have a systematic approach for getting their ideas done.
You personally have been spearheading a bit of a campaign with Total, right?
Yeah, so we've been, a little bit of a departure from what we're used to at Exceed. This was in kind of platform operations and maintenance rather than in the drilling space, and it's been really interesting. Touching on some of the things that Chris said earlier around, pushing technology forward. This was more about going back to basics. We were on some of their brand new rigs that have all singing, all dancing, all the technology in the world, but we went back to stand-up meetings, bits of paper on the wall, looking at real data, bringing people together and collaborating and making decisions that way. Rather than just relying on the technology around about us, which was great, but it was just interesting to see how you need the people and the technology working together to make the right decisions and to make improvements.
Very good, very good. Now, you guys talk about in your written word, and I'm sure it's front of mind when you're offshore doing your thing with teams, the performance leadership system. What is that about?
So for us, the performance leadership system is about having a systematic approach to making improvements. Like I said earlier, people often don't know how to go and make improvements.
Sure.
And having a proper system for doing that you follow day in, day out is really important. And that's what we bring with kind of our 12-step process to implement that. And then the reason that we put leadership in there is that it's absolutely essential to making this happen, and to making sure that everybody, from us to everybody within the crew is held to account to doing this. And, for me, leadership doesn't have to be, Mel Gibson in Braveheart. It's not just about that, but it's more about just making right decisions with good intentions, and making sure you hold everybody account to this process that we know that works, because so often it doesn't happen. And if we can drive that, then we're really on the road to building a really good culture, particularly in an offshore environment where you've got people switching in and out all the time. It can sometimes be quite harsh out there. If people just need to see a bit of progress, they don't necessarily need perfection to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that I'm interested in is you're going to have to explain this, because it's been a kind of strong theme throughout the show. Chris kicked it off. How are you using AI to accelerate team learning and human performance? What is that all about?
Well, I mean, for me, I think about what I do on a day-to-day basis, whether that be, with teams in DWOPs or, after action reviews or advanced planning meetings. And we've got great experience in the room.
Yep.
And we've got, the experience of the coaches, and we've got all the procedures and data in front of us. But we literally have thousands and thousands of lines of lessons learned, actions that we put in place over hundreds of drilling programs. And right now, interpreting that and getting something meaningful out of it is quite challenging.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge opportunity to use something like AI to go in there, interpret that data, say, here's something similar that happened in the past. Here's the problems that this team came up against. Here are some potential solutions. And I really see it as another layer in the Swiss cheese that can really help us, not make mistakes in the first place, but then develop insights into how we might improve, the way that we work going forward. I think it could be a really, really powerful tool, and it's not going anywhere. It really is here to stay.
Absolutely. It's become in front of mind of just part of our daily. I mean, it's been with us behind a screen in our domestic lives for many years, but now we're seeing the value of it commercially and how we can actually tap into this and use it to help us become efficient and give us new ideas and all of that. So I mean,
like I say for me all the time, like, I'm dyslexic, so writing an email is a nightmare for me.
Right.
It makes a massive difference.
You too, both of you.
It just you don't have to worry about that stuff. Just focus on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, giving you time where you don't have to stress out about that. You can just get on, get it down, and get it done, and move on, helping us in our professional lives. Guys, it's been awesome to spend some time with you. Jim Gordon, Sentinel Subsea, please reach out to Jim. Callum Taylor, Exceed Energy. If you want to explore any of those topics, you know where they are, you know where to get them. Busy people, but I'm sure they'll give you some time. Please connect with them and extend the conversation. Gentlemen, it's been awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
We'll see you soon. Ta-ta.
Take care.
Bye-bye. That was Jim and Callum. Now, I have a question for you. I'm going to get my graphic up here. Are you looking to hire people? Are you looking to bring people into your organization, or are you looking to meet your next employer? Well, the OGV Energy Recruitment Fair is coming to Newcastle on the 1st of June, and we are looking for exhibitors and people to come and be with us. It's at the iconic St. James's Park. I'll just bring up the graphic there. There you go. Yeah, we're going to be there. It's going to showcase the very best in employment opportunities available across the UK energy sectors. We're partnering with industry bodies. We're partnering with academic institutions, the energy sector supply chain. We're going to look to provide insight and introductions to candidates that are looking to progress their careers in the energy sector or in a different avenue within the sector. Sponsored by AIS, Survivex and Oceaneering and Superior Recruitment. Get in touch now if you want to book a stand for as little as £350 plus VAT, and I'll show you how to do that. Or if you just want to register to come along. So that's what it looks like. I'll just pull up this 1 second here. If you want to find out where to do that, just go to here on the bottom of the screen, www.ogvenergy.events.energy/events, and you'll see the recruitment fair for St. James's Park there. You can click on it. Get in touch if you want to exhibit. It's great. It's going to be really well attended. We did the same in Aberdeen. I think it was in March time, and it was an absolutely brilliant session. So please get in touch if you'd like to be involved with that at our recruitment fair. Now to the markets. This is the moment of the show we call Market Watch, where we dive into everything that's going on in our markets. I'm going to bring on Teresa Wilkie. Hello, Teresa. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, Derek.
Very well indeed. It is good to see you. And I've also got, let me see, he's here somewhere. He's a stalwart of the show. He's been with us from the start. Neil Golding. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Afternoon all.
Afternoon. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, Teresa, we loved having you here, Director at Rig Logics at Westwood Global Energy Group. I think you might have some slides for us. Shall I put them up?
Are you? Yes, if you don't mind sharing them this time.
I will put them up, absolutely. Let me just bring them on the screen. So obviously we've got a bit of a drilling and well services bent to the show. So here we go. There's your first slide. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks very much, Eric. So we're going a little bit rogue this month. So instead of the usual roundup, I wanted to do more of a focus on the North Sea rig market, since it's the drilling and wells special. So I'll just ask you to move the slides on as we go and save me messing that side up. But so we recently prepared some slides with information from our Rig Logics database, with a bit of analysis on recent regional award activity and outlooks for semi-subs and jackups. So we thought we'd share those with you. As a little bit of a disclaimer, the historical data used in here just goes up to the end of the first quarter of this year. But if anyone is interested in receiving that sort of updated information through May, they can get in touch with me.
Brilliant.
So as I'm sure a lot of OGV's following is aware, the North Sea rig market has struggled quite a bit over the past years, really with that sort of lackluster demand, and hasn't really witnessed the same level as recovery as many of other parts of the world over the past few years either. And as Chris at Stena mentioned earlier, the global rig market is really very bright at the moment, but unfortunately, currently, it's not really the same story for the North Sea and specifically the UK. So, from this first slide and the right-hand chart, so this is showing awarded jackup days since 2015 by country. A big spike in 2017, so that was due to some long-term Norwegian contracts that were secured. And we did see some slight recovery demand in 2021 as well. But as you can see, 2022 was really in line with around about 2018 levels, so really quite flat. The semi-sub market on the left-hand chart, however, showing actually a bumper year for award activity last year. especially on the Norwegian side. So Norwegian marketed semi utilization currently is actually just sitting at 81% for the year, though. And although we also take into account that sort of seasonal nature of this market, we really don't expect that figure to go above the sort of 85, 86% sort of region this year. So although there were a lot of awarded days last year for those rigs, what we actually saw is that a significant proportion of this was for work beginning in late 2023 and then into 2024. Right. So this year really is expected to continue to be quite flat in the Norwegian side of things. And then on the UK semi, utilization is actually up above 90% just now. So a fairly healthy market currently, but as you can see that last year's demand activity was the highest that it's been since 2018. So unfortunately, we expect to see utilization fall as we move through the summer and especially into the autumn and winter months due to a lack of new demand coming out to the market for work this year and next. We do believe that a lot of that actually is off the back of recent increases and changes in the UK windfall tax, which has really had quite a dampening impact on both the UK jackup and semi-sub demand. And it's also resulted in some cancelled rig deals this year as well. So if you go on to the next slide for me.
There we are.
Thank you. Perfect. So although utilization and demand have been or are a bit flat at the moment, there are still some signs of changes and recovery to some extent in the market. Okay. So firstly, we have recorded an increase in average contract duration for North Sea jackups and semis almost year on year since 2018. And at the end of the first quarter of this year, the average contract duration for a North Sea semi was actually the highest in well over a decade. Although since this is not a full year, that could well reduce as we move further on through 2023. Mm-hmm. And another indication of the market changing is also that we're seeing more optional periods on contracts being taken up. So generally in a tighter market, this happens, especially as day rates begin to increase and also where there are, those sort of fixed price options available and where operators can lock in a rig at like a fixed price rather than going out to tender and perhaps being offered sort of higher commercial terms. So if you move on to the next slide again for me. Great. So first of all, our current outlook for the North Sea semi market then. So if I just draw your attention first to the grey area at the back of the right-hand chart. So that's actually showing the decline in marketed supply of semis in the region. And the period from 2015 to 2023, we actually recorded a 40% decrease. And that really has mirrored that sort of falling demand in the area following to oil price crashes, the pandemic, and then the current fiscal volatility in the UK sector, as well as growing numbers of attractive opportunities in other regions such as West Africa and Australia. So we've been seeing longer term campaigns elsewhere for these harsh environment rigs with better prospects for follow-on work, as well as higher day rates and sort of more attractive contract terms as well. So currently we don't expect to see any material changes to the UK policy. So we are predicting demand to continue to be pretty sluggish over the coming years. We know that several more North Sea semis are being bid to campaigns in areas like the Mediterranean, Africa, Asia, and Australia. Mm-hmm. And it's a real likelihood that more rigs will leave this year and next, which of course will mean a smaller pool of rigs to choose from in the region and likely higher day rates as well. But, as I mentioned before, the Norwegian sector has been quite flat in terms of demand. However, we do expect to see an increase in rig demand from the second half of next year and into 2025. And that's really following an increase in those PDO submissions off the back of the Norwegian tax incentives that were put in place in 2020. And we've actually seen a few recent market checks and tenders for long-term rig campaigns starting in late 24 and late 2025 over the past month as well. So this outlook I did a week or two ago. So actually with those additional tenders or requirements that we've seen out recently, that would actually mean that there would be a undersupply of semis in the market if we do see a couple more rigs leave as well. So is that we're maybe seeing a bit more recognition by Norwegian operators recently that they will need to act soon to secure the right rigs for their campaigns at a reasonable price if they don't act soon. And then just the final slide, please, Eric.
There we go.
Lovely. So a very similar outlook, really, on the jack-up side. So yeah, on the basically, sorry, supply has really fallen in line with demand again through the years, and recently we've actually seen some jackups moving into cold or smart stack, as there just isn't enough opportunities within the region. So, we've seen these harsh environment jackups being moved to, again, other areas. So, such as the Middle East, Africa, and Mexico, again, for more lucrative opportunities. And again, we expect to hear news fairly soon, I would imagine, of more jackups that will be leaving for work elsewhere. So with both of these outlooks for jackups and semis, of course, there are different scenarios that could play out. So for instance, if we see more tendering activity, maybe more investment in areas like CCS drilling, or we see some more plug and abandonment work come out. But as it stands, this is kind of how we see it at the moment. So the global market is tightening really rapidly. So if these units aren't contracted here, then we believe that they will be somewhere else, which is only going to kind of cut that availability within the North Sea and drive up pricing for those rigs that are left. So that's really it from me on my side. Our take, I would say, on kind of how we see the market.
No, I completely understand it, and yeah, as you said, if anybody wants that to take that conversation a bit further, just get in touch with you. It sounds like there's a lot of potential for P&A activity. Could this possibility and demand help with some of the UK rig supply potentially?
Yes, potentially, yes and no. So I think if tendering and awards for rigs for such campaigns happen sooner rather than later, but we continue to see those sort of campaigns continually shifting to the right, though there are a few very long-term opportunities pending that if they come to sort of fruition, then they will be of interest to drilling contractors in the region. But of course, day rates are increasing, and decommissioning work, it doesn't make an operator money the same way a development drilling campaign will. So often when rates for rigs increase, P&A work gets pushed back again. So, there's always that threat. But, there are, of course, companies with the likes of WellSafe that are basing their entire model on such work. And I would assume that they would be well placed for continuing to pick up a lot of that in the future, unless, of course, they decide to move their rigs out of the North Sea as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about moving rigs out of the North Sea, for those that have moved out of the North Sea to places like, just around the corner, like Australia, for instance, what do you think about the possibility of these rigs coming back?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And actually, that's something that I think a lot of people in the market are talking about. But I think for the two Australia semis that will be leaving sort of later this year and into next year, the prospects are probably quite slim. So it's very expensive to move those rigs that far. And also, you have additional things like securing a safety case to be able to operate in that area. Also, very expensive. And there's a substantial amount of demand coming out of there over the next few years as well. So I think the follow-on opportunities are quite good. But then you've also got those that have moved to Namibia, again, could be a question mark, and will likely depend on the results of the current exploration and appraisal campaigns. But I did actually see just this morning that the Deep Sea Bolster, so that's actually already been awarded an extension offshore Namibia. So maybe that answers the question.
That's some of the questions, yeah.
Yeah, and then on the jackup side, quite a few of the rigs that are moving out are for very long-term contracts. So it's probably quite likely that we won't see too many of them moving back anytime soon.
Okay, please extend the conversation with Teresa. Thank you so much for your insight. I want to say fantastic insight, but maybe not amazing news for the local sector, but still opportunities all the same. Thank you, Teresa. Hello to some of our viewers who've just joined. Finlay Johnson, lovely to see you. Mark Cowison just joined, absolutely brilliant. Soren, nice to see you. Mohammed and Edward, good to have you with us. Mr. Golding, any brighter news on the global project activity that you're seeing in oil and gas sectors across the world?
Well, yes, I think in short, let's try and.
Thank goodness.
But actually, there are things that I'd like to pick up on what Teresa said as well, perhaps after this, because there are concerns around the rig supply into other sectors, and I will touch upon that, Eric. But talking first off around the projects, well, we're seeing two very significant projects in the Americas and South America in particular reach final investment decision over the course of the past month or so. One of which is in Brazil, the Pau do Acucar gas field.
Easy for you to say.
Absolutely butchered that. Apologies for that one. And that's an Equinor development that's currently now underway. It's a two-phase development, and Technip FMC has recently been awarded the EPCI for the project's SURF scope, whilst MODEC has the FPSO for that particular project. A bit further north, we have a MODEC Toyo joint venture that's been awarded the FPSO contract for the Uaru oil field in Guyana, and that is another project, $12.7 billion, that has recently reached the final investment decision. So I'm going to continue with the Americas, because actually that's an area where we're seeing some significant pickup. I know that there's been some further rig activity there as well, longer term agreements that have recently been reached in Guyana, but in the US as well, we're beginning to see projects move forwards, albeit relatively slowly. But Sparta offshore oil field, which is being operated by Shell, we're expecting an FID to potentially be reached by the end of this year. And then in terms of new discoveries, which is always good news, Teresa's mentioned there with there's rumours coming out around Namibia at the moment, but Mexico as well. Wintershall have just identified a very significant resource, the Can exploration well. So more on that in due course, I think, and there'll be appraisal drilling that's going to be happening hopefully sometime in the not too distant future on that particular project. So all in, things are looking pretty good. I think in the Americas, Middle East, we're beginning to see some EPCs being picked up in that region as well, around Marjan field. And all in all, it's definitely a more buoyant market when it comes to the contractor side of things than we've seen for a little while.
Right.
So I think we're heading in the right direction from an oil and gas perspective.
Very good, very good. We've had a bit of a drilling and well services bent to this one, given the theme of our magazine this month and our guests. Out with the typical oil and gas sectors that we know and love, what other projects or sectors might present opportunities to anyone that's sitting in the audience representing drilling or well services in the supply chain?
Yeah, look, there are several opportunities. I think geothermal is obviously one area, but I want to pick up on what Teresa alluded to here, the CCS market. And all of these rigs leaving is a concern, because we need to speed up in that particular sector around Europe to ensure that we keep those rigs within the North Sea area. So carbon capture and storage, it's that storage element specifically where there's going to be some sizable opportunities. Look, Norway and the UK are going to be leading the way in terms of potential storage capacity going forward, and most of that will be in the form of existing and depleted hydrocarbon fields. And what we're aware of there is this huge storage potential, as I mentioned, in these particular countries. But also, you've got to look further afield. The Med in Romania, Bulgaria, Italy, and Greece. These are all other parts of the world that could and will require further drilling, I think, going forward in this particular area. Now, we're already beginning to see the licenses move forward in terms of the storage licenses, which is promising. In Denmark, you've got Total Energies, who've recently signed and been awarded a number of licenses for CO2 offshore storage off the coast of the western Denmark. Now, some of that is linked to the Harald gas fields, and now they'll all be assessed as part of the Bifrost project that's currently underway. In Italy, you've got Ravenna, which is a ENI development that's currently underway. First off, looking at the Homonymos depleted gas field in Ravenna's offshore. So look, there's plenty of new opportunities. I guess the concern might well be in terms of those rig suppliers. Will they be getting the day rates that they would be getting for development drilling that Teresa previously alluded to. But look, there are real opportunities in this area, and I think it's really a call to action here in terms of the government to just speed the damn thing up when it comes to carbon capture and storage, so that we don't lose that supply chain here within the UK and Europe.
Thank you so much. A great call to action at the end there that we hope is not falling on deaf ears. Teresa and Neil, thank you so much for your insight today, and thank you for the comments and questions coming in from our audience. We will catch you guys next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. There we go. Just a quick note into some of the people that have, Mark Cowison said we need to consider the PSV and anchor handling markets. He's absolutely right. 0 new builds planned in the short term due to finance challenges. We had a lovely comment in from, from Alan Quirk, saying that he worked in a previous role with Exceed Performance to support and demonstrate how all stakeholders values of creating high performance culture. Fantastic success across multiple projects, which is absolutely excellent. Thank you so much for that. And a note in from George Capatina, sorry, George. I hope that European Air will find a way to local energy, for which I consider was low for investment in the last years. I'm referring to drilling of new wells, oil and gas, geothermal and storage, etc. We are going to pull through with that a little bit. We've heard from EIC, we've heard from Westwood Global and Teresa. We are going to check in with a friend of OGV. We are going to check in now with Quintin Milne, Managing Director of DQ Intel. Hello, Quintin. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Eric, and hello, everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. Great insight on the show so far. I know you've been in the green room sitting there quietly taking lots of notes while you've been doing your thing. Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah, you're gonna have lots to tell us. Now, for those who don't know Quintin, don't know DQ Intel, which I would find quite surprising because you're quite a well-known chap. Tell us a wee bit about DQ Intel, Quintin.
Thanks, Eric. DQ is a small consultancy. We're very much a boots on the ground, actionable BD lead service. They're really stalwart companies, like we just heard from there. Teresa was bang on with a lot of points, and so is Neil. Westwood and EIC, they paint a very good picture, a very broad picture of what's going on in the market. Shell buys block from BP, etc. We focus on the old school method of BD, we're an extension of a company that employs us as a subscription. We're an extension of their BD team. We often find since COVID and the long lull before, a lot of companies maybe have a sales director, not the same sales team, and they can't be everywhere. And they're keeping their main couple of customers busy, entertained. So we present daily leads of those small operators that have just got FID approval, or they've just put a sniff out there for a rig, or they've just employed a drilling manager, and we're proud of the ones where Crogga, for example, is planning a well in Isle of Man. 360 are doing it. We were speaking to Juan Cotier when he was doing seismic almost 3 years ago. We've done updates whenever they're valued. It might be 3 months, might be a year, to now he's looking for a well management company, and now he's awarded one, and now he's looking for a rig, etc. And that's the kind of stuff we do. And we put them direct in contact with these people, ranging from the CEOs to the lead drilling engineer or procurement specialist on the project.
Nice one. So that makes it nice and clear. So it's actionable BD, boots on the ground. Speak to this group here about this project, and get in early and get your company established, and you facilitate that connection, which is brilliant. You personally have been neck deep in a drilling sector for many years. Now, keeping in mind that Mr. Mills has said, be careful now in the chat. Ian Mills has said, what are your feelings about the global drilling sector right now?
My thoughts on the global drilling sector right now. Teresa touched on a lot of this. This is Ian's probably telling me about, because we joke about this at the state of the UK, and I won't go into a long one there, because I do see a lot of positives for companies pivoting into seeing a lot of talk for geothermal, and quite frankly, a lot of the well teams heading a lot of projects happening in Africa. So what have I seen? Post the 7-year price crunch and then COVID, a lot of rigs were scrapped, hence part of what Teresa was saying, putting the price up, and day rates, a lack of availability. But I'm also seeing long lead items and equipment being in short supply. People were expecting wellheads and casing to be sitting with the trading houses. It's not. A lot of it got turned into piling in the last several years. You know, folk like John Laurie have had bumper years in the past few years, taking loads of great 7-inch liner stock and turning it into the foundations of a new block of apartments on the walls of Cornwall. You know, so and then, like Teresa said, things like UK windfall tax. There's just been a flock to projects that are easier to get sanctioned and happen in places like Africa. So that's what I'm seeing with the rig market. Teresa touched on it very well there. And I'm also seeing a lot of operators taking things for like the next 2 years. They're actually willing to pay down non-operational days just to keep it, to move on to the next project. That tells you about the supply chain there, you know.
Very much so. So your business is all about that actionable boots on the ground stuff. For anyone who's sitting watching this, or anyone who's sitting watching this who knows someone who's in the kind of drilling and well services sector, what is your advice right now? What should people be looking at? What is hot around the globe? Because you're well connected in what's actually happening in the world.
Okay, thanks, sir. I'll try and touch on that. We focus on that 40 or 40% of the pie, that's small operators that will come and go quickly and do 1 to 6 wells. They may then turn into a mid-size operator afterwards. But what's hot just now, I'm seeing some really interesting stuff. A project I've followed with some interest for a few years was what's now called Coastline Exploration. They've taken on the ex-Soma blocks in Somalia. They spent about 30 million a handful of years ago doing seismic with military, gunship support because of all the pirates in Somalia. Now, there's 3D seismic to be shot with Coastline at the end of this year in Q4, and then they've got 2 deep water wells to drill. I was just speaking with the VP of Exploration, Katia, just the other week. So that's a great one in Africa. You got Total South Africa going back to Brulpuda to drill 3 to 6 wells, another deep water campaign offshore South Africa. Very interesting. It's blocks 11B and 12B. All the heads of all the heads of Slum, Baker, and Halliburton have been down there in the last month or two trying to get their prices in for this. It's going to have to be DNV rated equipment. It's the Odgefell Deep Sea Mira that's just been contracted. And that's likely they want to spud the first well in Q1 24 as well. Right. So, interestingly, we talk there about, yes, I do agree with the state of the UK with Teresa. There's some interesting things though. There's Harvester Energy looking for rig availability and long lead item deliveries for a drilling campaign in Q2 2025 across 4 licenses that they're being applied for. They need a small FPSO for that. There's some interesting stuff happening in Ireland. Barry Rowe, for example, with NRG. Europa's got a well. They're looking into doing Vermilion's, planning a well next year, maybe rolling into the following year. So that's interesting. Also in Europe, we've got Hellenic Petroleum, Eric.
Yeah.
They were on the radar a handful of years ago. Some people might remember them. It was one well in Greece, AGR, went under, and COVID happened. So like many projects, been pushed to the right for a few years. It's back with a vengeance. They've almost finished shooting 3D seismic, and there's 4 or 5 wells planned for Q4 2025. That's a really interesting one, and that's an example of the Greek government just saying we need energy independence, push ahead. And I'm seeing a lot of other interesting stuff in the geothermal market too, from Kalahari Resources in Zambia. A lot of these outreach countries are waking up to the fact that we'd like to be not dependent on the situation with Russia, etc. So if they've got helium, if they've got geothermal wells, if they've got lithium and brine on their doorstep, they want to exploit it and be able to have that to trade or utilize themselves. Another one, the Falklands is very interesting coming back. The old rock copper assets. Navitas should have FID approval in Q1 2024. Currently been looking for a drilling manager who will decide if they go well management or build their own drilling team. And that would be for 14 wells in Q2 2025. And to further my last point on what you're saying, what's happening in the drilling market, going back to my last question, sorry, there's a lot of bundled services happening. You're seeing companies, well teams join with service companies to offer a bundled service to make it as slick and as efficient as possible. It's quite interesting. Like Schlumberger, I know, are tracing that project very hard. It's a multi-well project, and I can understand it. So yeah, there you go.
Hey, listen. Yeah, thank you for sharing your insight. I guess when I said what's hot around the globe, in a general sense, it's maybe thinking differently and getting more connected into perhaps new ways of thinking, new ways of working, and coming away from not coming away from the traditional path of your BD, but actually thinking a wee bit differently about some of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think so, Eric. I think a lot. I think we're all guilty. I certainly of sitting on your laurels where you've looking after your key contacts. Some major service companies that I work with have got a couple of major contracts, say with Shell, but they can suddenly come and go, or an issue can happen. So it's much better to have 20 strings to your bow than one, right? And if you're tendering early in the early phases of the small operator sector of the market, you've got to be in it to win it. So getting into them and getting on their radar, having a coffee with a relevant new drilling manager or procurement manager, and getting in early so you're included. By the law of averages, you're going to get at least 20% of that. If you're
absolutely. Hey, listen, for anyone out there who liked what you heard and wants to know more and what's coming in the future, his name's Quintin Milne. DQ Intel is where you can get him, and you will happily connect with people and extend that conversation, right, Quintin?
Would love to help. Anyone, please get in touch. Yeah,
absolutely. Great to see you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks again, Eric. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Bye. So we're reaching the end of our show, and we thought we'd end it with all of that activity from the service world and the drillers and people who are making new tech in drilling in wells. We thought we'd end it with a little session by bringing on someone who I've known for a long time, which is a bit embarrassing. We're going to start with that. Willem Boone, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's good to see you. When I said we've known each other for quite a long time, we're going to start that, you went, oh yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked this out. We've traced this back. You and I met, was it 2003, 2004?
2003, Ocean Nomad, yeah.
Ocean Nomad. I was a head of safety at the time for Diamond Offshore. You were a young, sprightly well engineer with the Talisman, was that right?
It was a worked for Synergy Wells then, but it was for Talisman, yes.
It was, absolutely. And I think the very first time we met was maybe a DWOP or something like that in Nairn.
In Nairn or one in Edinburgh?
Yeah, something like that.
One of the other ones, yeah.
But we've kept in touch. We've aged. You've aged slightly better than I have. You've got that kind of rugged look about you now. I've just become like a thumb with a face drawn on it, as you keep reminding me about. So it kind of shocked us the other day when we were having a chat that it's 20 plus years. So you've been around the patch. You're now Wells Technical Authority at Spirit. Can you give us a bit of an idea of what Spirit's kind of focus is for anyone who's not totally familiar with your portfolio and what you do?
Yes, Spirit is very much in abandonment mode. Good news for the companies that we got awarded our CCUS license for the Morecambe hub, so that's great news for the company. But from the wells department perspective, we are abandoning wells.
Yeah,
we have one of the semis on hire, and we're abandoning our oil field at the moment. And then we take a little bit of a break, and then we go into I have slides some because I was talking to this morning a 3 or 4 year P&A campaign to get rid of our remaining wells and platforms, and that hopefully lines us up for the repurposing of the Morecambe reservoir into a storage facility. What type of storage it's going to be, I'm not sure. It might be hydrogen, it might be carbon capture. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who are sitting out there that maybe aren't in the midst of drilling in wells, what does the day job look like? Wells Technical Authority and any other kind of side missions that you have?
Well, I tell my kids that I write important emails, but yeah. So I sort of have 2 jobs, perhaps. I look after the integrity of our producing wells. So well integrity assurance is probably one of my primary roles. And then in addition to that, I provide the independent technical review of our drilling activity. So as a Wells Technical Authority, I'm sort of the policeman in the department. Just to provide that an extra pair of eyes when engineers make changes to the programs to make sure that those changes are managed properly with the required rigor. And then in addition to that, because I'm old and I've been in the industry for a very long time, I'm allowed to do the things that older people do. You're going to give something back to the industry. So I've been getting a little bit more involved with the SPE and with OEOK, with rewriting decommissioning guidelines, and I've been working quite a lot with the NZDC with technology development, and in particular the development of alternative materials for well decommissioning.
So you don't like to sit still for very long, even at these advanced years in your life?
That's right. I'll have to write that down.
Yeah, exactly. You were mentioned in one of the earlier speakers. Jim Gordon from Sentinel spoke about the kind of work. Now, we don't have to go into great detail about that one, but in terms of one of the things I'm fascinated about is, you know, I spent most of my commercial life trying to get in to talk to operators to show them our thing, and to see if they could use it. Now there's ways to do that, right? There's ways to do it instead of just holding up a thing at the window and saying, "Do you have any use for this?" There's ways and ways to go about it, right? So what was interesting about the whole thing about Well Sentinel and all of that for you, and how they packaged it up as a potential solution for you guys?
I wrote down while Jim was chatting. There's a difference when it comes to introducing new technology between necessity and change, and with the Sentinel equipment, it was a little bit about change, but in our case, it became also a necessity, and that really made a difference. So the Sentinel technology, I met up with Neil in 2018. We started talking about the system. They were using a liquid tracer system at that moment in time, trying to like the idea about monitoring suspended wells, but really struggling with, well, how do you deploy this in the well and how do you then monitor it? We helped them out getting the equipment offshore, put them in the water. It's very different from going into Bucky Harbor to do a field test versus doing it at 30 meters from a jackup rig. Yeah. And we just said, look, we don't mind. There is something happening here that we're not 100% sure yet, so we'll put it in the water for you. And that's what we did. But then we came to the realization is that the liquid trigger system was really difficult to filter for them in the well. So ideally, you want to monitor a real well. And then we said, you know what? We have one of those wells in the southern North Sea. And then at a very, very short turnaround, they developed a gas trigger system. And now 2 years later, they're deploying the gas trigger systems on a global basis. And when Jim was talking, I'm not sure whether you saw me, but you have to excuse me because I do this, right? So this is one of Jim's trigger system. So it's a real thing. And so I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to keep this one, but it's on my desk. So if anybody doesn't believe Jim how good the system is, then come and talk to me, because I really like the technology. It's a really good idea. It doesn't use power. It's passive. It's wonderful, you know. And there's a good take up on it, because we're all concerned about methane emissions and leaking wells. So it just fits. It has a good application globally. So that's really good. So it's nice to see that a technology that we helped out of sheer interest has made so much progress over the last couple of years.
Yeah, outstanding, terrific. So it can be done. It can be done for all of you out there. Yeah. Willem, what has ridiculous question, but I'm interested. There are trends and themes throughout your career that you've seen in well management. What have you seen change, and what is the current sort of mode of thinking? So when you and I met in 2003, you had a sort of vision for this is going to happen, and there was all sorts of things happening with multi-well drilling campaigns or things like that, or trends or things that came about. What is the current thinking, and what have you seen dramatically change in well management thinking?
I think for a very long time. Oh, but when we met, Senji was just starting as a well project management company, and at that time there was quite a few exploration companies that had exploration licenses, and they had no access to drilling rigs.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea then was that how do we improve the exploration activities in the North Sea? And then there was a pilot scheme came up to say, well, why don't we create a rig sharing agreement for exploration wells? That was kicked off. That something similar happened with in Norway with Rig Management Norway, again with smaller operators being able to sign up a semi for a 3-year period and get good contract terms and a continuous program with supervisors and engineers, etc. So when and we see the same thing happening again now with the abandonment work. There's a lot of push from the NSTA to say we should collaborate more in the industry. So I think we repeat things frequently. Now there's do we do an awful lot different? Sometimes I'm not convinced. We're just relearning the same thing, and the lessons that we learned, dare I say, 20 years ago, we're just implementing them now again for more collaboration on the decommissioning, in the decommissioning activities, which is great. The one thing that I'm trying to do different now is with implementation of new technology. What I've seen in the past is that new technology implementation works when there is a necessity for the technology. If something is broken, well, my screens just went black, so I just
hear you. We can still see you.
I just think you see my panic on my face. Oh no!
We did.
Anyway, and so and I'm not sure how many engineers are on the call, but engineers love to fight fires.
Yeah.
And we're really good at that. However, if we want to make future step changes in decommissioning, for example, there's probably not so many fires to fight. There are difficult wells that need bespoke technology solutions. But for the majority of the wells, if we want to make a step change in the performance, we need to change how we abandon wells. There's no necessity today. And that makes it really, really difficult because we're looking at a step change in performance, a step change in reliability of the abandonment plugs potentially.
Yeah.
But why would anyone change from pumping cement? Because we're good at pumping cement and tipping drill pipe in and out of the hole. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need to maintain that skill set because it is a difficult and dangerous operation to do. However, when it comes to implementing technology for change, it puts more pressure on the technology providers. It's no longer you're being called by an operator that says, this is broken, I want you to fix this. Bring along a couple of clever engineers, here's lots of money, and we'll develop that technology. That still happens, that's great. But if you want to say, you know what, I just don't want to pump cement through drill pipe after I've pulled the completion out of the ground, I want to remove rig-based activities from my abandonment program into a well intervention type of activity, which means I'm less dependent on drilling rigs, and the wells that we operate in the Morecambe Hub are completed at 30 degrees. So those are awkward wells to wireline in or drilling rigs for. And so if you want to change to an intervention-based P&A program, then implementing those new technologies is just more difficult. So the supply chain and the well operators, they need to be aligned. They need to have a shared vision, but there's more project management required because you need to build a business case for your new technology. You need to make sure that the preparation phase before the first trial is much more robust, because you make one mistake in a field trial and you lose all momentum and you lose all credibility. So testing new technology for changing efficiencies is higher risk. And I think so. If you would ask me today, what do we need to do different to that? It's no longer about qualifying a material, a little product. You need to understand the downhole application much better, and then you also need to say, well, and now how do I deploy this piece of equipment in the well, because traditionally you would show up, well, I've invented this, and how, and now you're going to tell me how you want to deploy my technology in your well, and there's nothing wrong with that, because innovation is amazing. However, in an environment where you decommission wells, you just need to work a little bit harder on field trials. You need to see it as a collaboration with a coach or a sponsor, with an operator, and then work towards a solution. But it is very much a project management skill, other than a firefighting skill.
So you kind of alluded to it, and maybe let the cat out of the bag. But if you could hold the entire global supply chain that feeds into the success of well management, well abandonment, whatever it would be, if you could give a piece of advice out to the supply chain about that new service, that new thing, that new whatever it might be, that new idea, that kind of well Sentinel kind of methodology, what would be if you could look them all in the eye and say, this is what you need to do before you bring something to us, what would that advice be?
I think you probably need to understand the application of your technology much more today than you did 20 years ago.
Okay.
Because the sales job is more difficult. You're no longer fixing a technology challenge. You're trying to change how wells are abandoned. And because change is required for 85% of the wells where we have difficult problems with, they have all been identified and technology is being developed for those. But if you would ask me, where can I make the biggest difference for my shareholders, or then it's not to fix one well out of the stock of 80 wells, it's just to make sure that the other 79 are abandoned efficiently and at a lower cost. So it's more to get a better understanding how wells are being produced or drilled or maintained at the moment, and understand the application of your technology, and just make sure you find that sponsor. Now with the Sentinel example is a good example, but another example is perhaps the rock solid technology from Interwell. Now, there was a connection between those two companies. The technology was stuck in Norway. How are we going to carry out field trials? And if you then find a willing partner that can sponsor the technology, but also help you with your field trial application processes, that will make a huge difference. So so I would say, make sure that you have sufficient well knowledge so you understand the application of your technology in a well better than you've ever done before, because only then can you have a different discussion with potential clients going forward. Because we're no longer in the space that will you try this for me? You need to do more. You just and then the engineers need to do more. It takes a lot more effort to justify a field trial in today's decommissioning environment than ever before, unless you have a necessity because you have casing vent flow or you have a particular problem. The making changes to routine operations just requires a lot of work, business development work, to make sure you have a technical and commercial proposal to make sure that the technology gets developed, because otherwise we'll just end up pulling completion and pumping cement, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to make a difference, then you just need to go and do your homework and do it again and again, and not let go of your idea if you believe in it. I think you need to be a bit of a bull terrier. No, tenacity is really helpful when you do technology development.
Wow. Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming on the end of the show, just to sort of bookend this. We could talk to you for hours, but for now, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
If you want to get in touch and extend that conversation further and talk to him about some availability of wells for field trials, perhaps, he might ask you to speak to someone else. But that's fine. Willem, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again.
No problem. Right.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We've reached the end of our show. We ran over a bit on time, but please forgive us. Thanks to Ian, John. Yeah, he did spot the little dinosaur. I saw that too. Graham, thanks for joining us. Brilliant. It's been a great show. Chris Redgrave made a statement. Why don't we do a more frequent Where is it? There, it's there. Can we make drilling and well services more frequent? This has been a very popular show, and I think Chris may actually have a very valid point there. The winner for our best comment of the day, there's no science to this. I'm going to give it to Ben Herriot for his question that came up to Chris Carbo. Ben will be in touch about your advert in a future edition of the magazine. Thank you so much for being with us today. A huge thanks to all of our guests for joining us, and thank you so much for your interaction today. The show would be nothing if you didn't join and get involved. We're going to see you again on Thursday, the 29th of June at 2 p.m. when our theme will be offshore wind. So if you're sitting out there thinking, well, we're into offshore wind, I'd like to be on that show. All you need to do is drop me a little line here, or get in touch with Dan or Andy at OGV, and we can see about sorting that out. But for now, thanks to all our guests. Thanks for everyone for joining us. We will see you next time. I'm going to play it with our lovely film because it's recently produced and I'm very proud of it. See you soon. Bye-bye.